Okay. In a resource-based economy, we operate under the advice of a survey committee. For example, if you have an ocean liner with 1,000 passengers, how do they know how much food, how much water to order? Well, they have experience, they have data which they collect. For 1,000 passengers, you need so much water, so much soap, so much cleansing things, bed sheets, everything is based upon a survey. An ocean liner cannot operate unless it corresponds to the amount of people traveling on the boat. The same with a resource-based economy. In a resource-based economy, the survey committee tells us that a particular city can house 5,000 or 10,000 people. Once you know the amount of people involved in the city, then you can design water supplies that take care of those needs. But if you don't have the resources, it doesn't matter how many people you've got. If you don't have the resource to feed them, you're going to have problems. You're going to have reactions. If some people can own large grocery stores and there's mass unemployment in the area, if the unemployed do not get sufficient funds to purchasing food or whatever they need, they will violate the law. They will steal, break windows, and take food. Crime is based upon lack or scarcity or fear of scarcity. There are many millionaires that commit crimes too. It doesn't mean that they commit crimes because they're bad. They commit crimes because they're able to. They're able to get away with certain things. There are many people that cannot or do not pay their taxes, and they are indicted, or they're called forth, or they have to pay fines. There are many law firms that can enable you to get away with not paying complete taxes by saying, look, if this person owes you $20,000, all they can raise is $5,000 cash, or you get nothing. So would you settle for that? Most companies do. So people do not pay the taxes because once they earn a certain amount of money, their lifestyle goes up and their expenses go up, and they can't pay that amount of taxes, or they don't wish to. They wish to maintain horses in stables for riding, and they maintain a yacht which needs servicing, and so the more you earn, the higher your standard of living, the more expenses you encounter. I would say that the Venus Project, which bases its decisions and distribution of goods and services on the amount of people and the resources available. If we do not have the resources, we assign those tasks to labs. That's how we know what to assign to different research centers. If we say we don't have enough building material or concrete, we announce that at all the research labs, and we say, can you come up with a substitute material? Just as Germany did. When we blockaded Germany from getting rubber from Sumatra, they had enough scientists, chemists, and technicians to develop synthetic rubber. I think that science usually can find answers to most problems if given the assignment to do that. If a very famous person, say like President Roosevelt, had infantile paralysis, then a lot of research money is put into that. We put research money into, or research equipment, into areas that are dominant. For example, if AIDS become the dominant physical disorder, that is given more equipment to do research with, not based upon famous people having a certain disorder. We would give every lab whatever they requested, to whatever extent we can. And if we didn't have materials, we'd put in requests for optical departments to develop new instruments to detect particular physical disorders earlier. But labs don't always have enough funds to do research in many areas. The government, for example, cut back on many sponsored funds they used to sponsor due to the economic hard times. But hard times do not alleviate pain and misery and suffering when people have cancer. So we want to do away with the monetary system because it fluctuates. We want to maintain a balanced load economy, and we want to maintain more equipment than necessary. We want to maintain more equipment than necessary in order to continually protect people from suffering or unnecessary pain. For example, we don't know how many dental offices to operate. We don't know how many hospitals to build until we are able to do a complete survey of the physical condition of most of the American people. There are many Americans that need dental care, Frenchmen, Germans, Greeks, that cannot afford to go to a dentist. There are many older people that need false teeth that can't afford them. We cannot decide how much research or how much equipment will be put into the development of false teeth until we do a survey and find out how many people need it, not whether they have the funds to afford it. There are many people that will die of cancer because they can't afford treatment that may give them additional 5 years. They just can't afford it. They can't afford to go to a doctor with every pain they feel. So you have lesser advantages, even though you have a democratic society, which I don't understand. How can a society be democratic when all people do not have access to medical care? It doesn't matter what label you give it. If they don't have access due to mental insufficiency or that their profession had been phased out, whatever the reasons, don't call it a democratic society, because people do not always have access to things. Yes, they can go to a clinic, but most hospitals can only take on so many people. They cannot take on everybody. And I think there are many old folks that I have seen that do not have false teeth, that certainly need them. And they just don't have the money to afford that. There are many sick people that need operations. They cannot afford to go to a hospital or cannot even afford to pay for MRIs or whatever scanning machines are necessary. And yet, when the trouble comes, we take their children and we use them for soldiers. If soldiers fight to protect this country from being invaded or exploited or robbed of its resources, I think the soldiers deserve the best that the nation can provide for them. Send them to universities, train them to do things that they haven't been trained to do without a fee. And I think this should happen to all people, because all people bear children which you use as their soldiers. Now, I don't think that anyone ought to be drafted into the Army unless the Army sponsors all babies, unless you pay for the food, clothing, shelter, education of children, then you own them. And then you can use them if you want to for military purposes. But if the family raises the child, they buy it clothing, they buy it books, and they send it to medical school, then you cannot draft them into the Army. They are not the product of the leaders of our country, unless the leaders pay for it. And I know they don't pay for those things. I know that families pay for that. If you pay, they only pay for flight training if you need soldiers to fly airplanes. They pay for the flight training. But that is using people without, if soldiers fight to protect the country, they deserve to be protected. And all people, all Americans that work in coal mines because they're not educated enough to work as a physician or a lawyer. If they work in a coal mine, they keep your house warm. They're doing things that you don't do. That if people work in a factory and they do nothing but drill holes all day, they make it possible for you to drive automobiles. So there's really no one that I know of that has a job that isn't doing something, the best they can do to help support the nation. But their earning power is insufficient to take care of their needs. This is what I'm concerned about. And the Venus Project does not discriminate between professions. If there were no men down 1 mile under the ground mining and doing that job, the wealthy could not live as they live. They could not drive the cars or sail the boats or do anything. They could not join the jet set if somebody else didn't build the airplanes or assemble them. So I feel that every person is important, particularly the more people we educate in relevant areas, meaning areas that are useful to society. I'm not talking about parasitic professions. I'm talking about relevance. And if all people worked on some area that enhanced society, they all deserve the best we can give them. And if wealthy people require entertainment, they can have it. They can have people dance and sing for them. And we have these thousands of people that work in ballet, and they work at Radio City Music Hall, and they practice dancing all day long, but they earn very little. And they're always struggling to make ends meet. And that is not necessary in a high-energy civilization. And you can't have a high standard of living unless you have high-tech. And high-tech doesn't come about from nothing. People have training in high-tech areas. The more people that have training in high-tech areas, medicine, botany, astronautics, the richer the nation. Every person deprived of an education, we pay for. So I would say that it is much more efficient to educate people to their highest potential. That would serve the needs of many people. And to the extent that people cannot afford to go to school and become engineers, chemists, biologists, surgeons, we harm and we limit the service of millions of people. Bill Gates lives in a house with multiple rooms, thousands of rooms. He doesn't earn 1 million a year, he earns many millions. And he can't eat 20 meals a day. All he needs is certain things. If you just measure what he really needs and make it available to him. But he doesn't need billions of dollars to invest, in which he makes more than that. Well, he's threatened by innovation that surpasses his productive capacity. Everybody in the monetary system is threatened by innovation. And so they try to stop innovation if they can, in areas they can. So I would say that the system is contradictory. In maintaining the competitive edge, you don't share ideas with other people. Otherwise you can't maintain the competitive edge. If people didn't share ideas at all, we'd be living in caves. Everybody that writes books on whether it's hunting or fishing or producing goods and services, are all based on experiences that other people had that prevent us from going through all the rudimentary things they had to go through to arrive at that. So books are really extensional devices. And we don't have that in a monetary system. If parents can't buy encyclopedias for their children, if they can't buy better books for their children and give them a better education and nutritious food, if they can't afford that, you're putting a burden upon people that have to support those people.
I don't even think there's a market for encyclopedias anymore. They have computers with encyclopedias in
Well,
them.
if they can't afford computers.
Right, that's more appropriate
Or
maybe to
whatever,
say.
yeah.
Encyclopedias, it's a dead product.
And every year, more has to be made available to the poor, not less. More in terms of information, education, nutrition, clothing, heating of the home in the winter. You know, a lot of people don't have adequate heating or air conditioning, and they suffer. They sit in the house with coats on because they don't have access. And that happens in terms of an earthquake or a flood where the power is cut out to millions of people. They suffer. We can't afford to build redundant systems. We can do it in a resource-based economy because all the Earth's resources become the common heritage of all the world's people. And we use resources to upgrade all people. And in that way, we have more to look forward to. We have better educated people, better qualified research scientists who get additional training. Sometimes a person can't afford to go back and study other fields which would help them. And so we operate at a tremendous disadvantage. Think of all the paperwork done on products that are the same. There'd be automatic inventory. All that would be automated. And automatic inventory would conserve resources. And the development of maglev trains would diminish wear and tear on the wheels, axles, and ball bearings. And if we used a lot of Tesla's ideas, we probably could extend the lives of millions of people in many different areas. But it isn't just Tesla. There are thousands of other people out there that can make enormous contributions. We do not harness them. We don't even know how to evaluate them. And we have traditional values that hold back the culture. We have right, wrong, good, bad, and we assume that people can be good or bad depending on their character. That's a myth. Behavior is shaped by culture. And once you understand that, you can design a culture to generate operant behavior that's more relevant to people than just abstract behavior.